Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Have you ever wondered why you keep attracting the same kind of pain? The same heartbreaks that leave you empty, the same people who seem to drain your energy, the same mistakes you swore you'd never make again. You change the city, the job, the relationship, the scenery, yet the story keeps repeating. Only the faces change. It's like life keeps showing you the same movie, hoping that this time you'll understand the plot. It feels unfair, doesn't it? You try to do everything right, to grow, to forgive, to move on, but somehow the cycle returns, whispering familiar lines in a new voice. It's as if existence itself conspires to place you in front of the same cracked mirror, the one you keep trying to clean. You polish it again and again, but the cracks remain. You think the world is breaking you, when in truth, it's trying to show you where you're already broken. That mirror is your unconscious. It holds every memory you pushed away, every emotion you labeled as too much, every truth you feared would make you unlovable. And because the soul refuses to forget what the mind tries to bury, it keeps returning, through people, through experiences, through pain. Carl Jung called this psychic compensation. The psyche's attempt to restore balance by repeating what remains unhealed. Until you make the unconscious conscious, he wrote, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. It's not punishment, it's pattern. The universe isn't cruel, it's consistent. What you refuse to look at, you are doomed to live out. The same controlling boss that mirrors your fear of authority. The same unavailable lover who reflects your fear of intimacy. The same silence that echoes the words you never dared to speak. What you cannot face within, you will meet again without. The repetition is not to destroy you. It's there to awaken you. Pain is the psyche's way of knocking on the door of your awareness. The more you ignore it, the louder it becomes. The heartbreak deepens, the disappointment repeats, the anxiety grows, until you finally stop running and ask, what is this trying to show me? In that moment, you shift from victim to witness. You stop fighting reflection and begin to understand the message hidden beneath the mirror's cracks. Look closer. Every wound has its wisdom. The one who rejected you taught you to see your own worth. The one who betrayed you revealed the places where you betray yourself. The one who left showed you the parts of you still waiting to come home. The pain you think is ruining your life is often the very thing trying to rebuild it on truth. You may not like the lessons, but they are sacred. They are life's way of asking for your participation in your own healing. The soul has infinite patience. It will wait as long as it takes. It will repeat the same experience through different people until your awareness expands enough to choose differently. And when that moment comes, the pattern finally breaks, not because life changed, but because you did. So if you find yourself once again in the same story, with the same ache wearing a new disguise, don't rush to escape it. Sit with it. Ask it what it wants to teach you. Because what you are facing is not the end of the cycle. It's the beginning of consciousness. Maybe this is a misfortune. Maybe this is mercy. Maybe the pain that keeps returning isn't a curse at all. It's your soul's way of leading you back to yourself. To understand, we must go deeper, down to where the pain was born. Imagine your mind as a house. The part you live in, the bright rooms where you talk, plan, and think. That's your ego. It's where you keep the things you want people to see. Your achievements, your manners, your logic, your control. But below that polished floor lies another level, quiet and dimly lit. A basement full of locked doors and forgotten voices. That's the unconscious. It's where you've hidden everything you couldn't face, everything you didn't have time, safety, or courage to feel. Carl Jung said the ego is just the ground floor of the psyche, a small portion of a vast inner structure. Beneath it lives a personal unconscious, filled with your memories, repressed emotions, and unhealed fragments of experience. And deeper still, beneath even that, there's something more ancient, the collective unconscious, a shared field of symbols and instincts that connects you to every human being who ever lived. It's the soil from which myths, dreams, and intuitions grow. In the ego and the unconscious, Jung wrote that the unconscious is not an enemy, but a living force that seeks the balance of the personality. That single sentence changes everything. The unconscious doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to complete you. Every fear, jealousy, and unspoken longing you try to bury is not there to haunt you. It's there to help you evolve. The psyche's goal is wholeness, not comfort. When you deny a feeling, it doesn't die. It simply moves downstairs. The sadness you dismiss as weakness, the anger you label as shame, the desire you call inappropriate, all of them become residents of your inner basement. They wait. They're patient but restless, leaking through your choices, disguising themselves as coincidence or fate. The person who triggers you is often carrying the emotion you refuse to acknowledge. The situations you can't seem to escape are your repressed stories trying to find a voice. You think you're in control, but the truth is, what you suppress begins to steer from the shadows. You say, "I don't want to be like my parents," and yet you speak with their tone. You promise you'll never repeat that same relationship, but you fall into the same pattern, because the unconscious has taken the wheel. Jung warned that what we fail to make conscious returns as destiny. We think life is happening to us, when in reality, our unhealed self is calling the shots from the basement. The unconscious speaks in symbols because words aren't its native language. It sends messages through dreams, synchronicities, sudden emotions, and intuitive knowing. A nightmare is not punishment. It's a telegram from the deeper self, saying, "There's something here you've forgotten to feel." When you begin to listen, the house inside you changes. Light enters the rooms you once feared to open. What was haunting you becomes your guide. Ignoring the unconscious is like locking a child in a dark room and pretending they'll fall asleep. They won't. They'll cry, then scream, and eventually they'll find a way to break the door. The more you resist what you are, the louder those inner voices become. Through anxiety, through repetition, through pain. Life keeps inviting you to descend, not to punish you, but to return you to yourself. And that's the paradox. The descent is the beginning of the rise. Wholeness demands that you visit every floor of your inner home, even the ones you've avoided, because the light that heals you is hidden exactly where you least want to look. But what happens when we keep ignoring those voices for too long? The pain starts choosing for us. You think you chose that relationship, that friendship, that familiar storm that always ends the same way. But it wasn't choice, it was recognition. Somewhere deep within you, a wounded child saw a reflection of its pain and whispered, "I know this place." The psyche doesn't seek happiness first. It seeks wholeness. And wholeness demands that what was once broken must be touched again, not to suffer, but to heal. That's why you keep circling back to the same lessons, as if trapped on a carousel that spins and spins while convincing you that you're moving forward. Different people, same emotion. Different story, same ending. You mistake motion for progress, but the truth is, you've been orbiting the same wound. The soul doesn't repeat out of cruelty. It repeats out of devotion. It keeps returning to the moment of fracture until consciousness arrives to mend it. Carl Jung observed, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That single sentence contains the map of human suffering. The forces we refuse to face don't vanish. They find actors to play their part. You're not cursed. You're being guided. Every painful repetition is an invitation to awaken the sleeping truth beneath the pattern. Think about it. When you meet someone who feels strangely familiar, it's rarely coincidence. Your nervous system recognizes emotional landscape long before your mind does. It senses the same atmosphere it knew in childhood, the same silence, the same volatility, the same ache for approval, and it confuses familiarity with safety. That's the invisible magnet of the unconscious. It doesn't draw you toward joy. It draws you toward completion. The child within you believes, if I can relive this story and make it end differently, I'll finally be free. But freedom never comes from replaying the past. It comes from seeing it. The psyche, in its mysterious wisdom, creates external dramas that mirror internal ones. The argument with your partner isn't just about dishes or attention. It's the old hunger to be heard. The exhaustion you feel in relationships isn't from giving too much. It's from giving what was never received. Life places you in emotional replicas of your earliest wounds, not as punishment, but as opportunity. The pattern continues until it's understood, and the moment you recognize the script, the carousel begins to slow. Imagine the child you once were, waiting in the dark, believing love must be earned through pain. That child still lives within you, choosing the same roles, searching for a parent in every partner, a savior in every friend. But no one outside can rewrite that story. Only you can. The healing doesn't happen when the right person arrives. It happens when you stop abandoning the parts of you that were left behind. Every repeated heartbreak, every familiar frustration, is the psyche's way of saying, look here, this is where the light must enter. The unconscious isn't sabotaging your life. It's staging your redemption. It keeps bringing you to the same threshold until you walk through it with open eyes. But here lies the danger. If you keep turning away, if you keep numbing, distracting, denying, then the pattern grows darker. What begins as a whisper becomes a storm. The same energy that once sought healing starts seeking survival. And when that happens, the pain begins to choose for you. The more you run from your shadow, the larger it becomes. You can change your address, your partner, your circle of friends, even your name. But the shadow always finds a seat beside you. It travels light, carrying only what's essential. You, wherever you go, the unresolved follows. And every time you try to outrun it, life quietly rearranges itself to remind you what still lives in the dark. At first, denial feels like protection. You tell yourself you're fine. You distract yourself with work, with noise, with helping others, with scrolling endlessly through a glowing screen. You build walls of control, calling them peace. But the walls start to crack. Beneath the surface, something begins to pulse. A quiet restlessness, a fatigue that no sleep can heal. That's the cost of separation from the soul. Jung warned that the longer we repress what seeks integration, the more violently it returns. What you push down does not disappear. It condenses. It waits. He called it the invasion of the unconscious, the moment when repressed forces break through the fragile structures of the ego. The anger you swallow for years turns into anxiety. The grief you never allowed yourself to feel hardens into numbness. The need for control becomes panic when control is lost. What was once shadow becomes symptom. The unconscious, ignored for too long, doesn't whisper anymore. It floods. Imagine walking through a labyrinth, trying desperately to find the exit. Every turn looks promising, but you end up back where you started. That's what happens when you avoid your pain. You walk faster but go nowhere. The walls of the labyrinth are made of the very emotions you refuse to face. Fear, shame, guilt, loneliness. Each time you turn away from them, the corridors multiply. You begin to feel trapped in your own life, unable to explain why nothing feels real anymore. People call it burnout, emptiness, or existential fatigue. Jung saw it as something far more sacred. The psyche's desperate attempt to restore wholeness. When the conscious mind resists growth, the unconscious takes over. It dismantles the false stability you built, not to punish you, but to wake you. The collapse you fear is often the soul reclaiming the ground it lost. The breakdown is the breakthrough in disguise. You start to notice signs. The dreams become vivid and strange. Emotions surface without warning. You cry at things you can't explain. Relationships that once felt stable begin to crumble under the weight of hidden truths. You feel lost, but that loss is necessary. Jung believed that crisis is not the end. It is the beginning of awareness. The descent is painful, but it's also sacred. The psyche doesn't destroy, it reorganizes. It pulls you inward, forcing you to confront what the surface self could no longer carry. In The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, Jung wrote that the unconscious does not merely react, it seeks expression. That expression often comes disguised as chaos. Yet within that chaos lies the map of renewal. When everything collapses, what remains is what's real. The ego breaks, but the self begins to emerge, the deeper intelligence of your being that knows how to navigate the dark. And that's the paradox of healing. You find freedom only by surrendering to what you've avoided. The labyrinth isn't a punishment. It's initiation. The way out isn't forward. It's inward. And it was there in the heart of that descent that Jung discovered something extraordinary. The map that turns pain into path. Jung called the path of healing individuation. The sacred process of becoming whole again. It's a journey of bringing light into what was forgotten, of transforming conflict into conversation between the conscious and the unconscious. It begins the moment you stop trying to fix, yourself, and start listening to what your pain is trying to reveal. Individuation isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. Picture a bridge connecting two worlds. On one side stand your conscious self, the one who plans, doubts, analyzes, and seeks control. On the other side waits the unconscious, mysterious, emotional, filled with symbols, dreams, and forgotten truths. Most people spend a lifetime standing on one side, afraid to cross. But healing happens in the middle, where both voices meet and learn to speak the same language. Jung taught that consciousness is one-sided, and the unconscious arises to compensate for that one-sidedness. That means what you call failure, breakdown, or mistake may actually be the self, the deeper organizing intelligence within you, trying to restore balance. The psyche doesn't punish imbalance. It corrects it. Every time something falls apart, something larger in you is trying to come together. This is the map of transformation. 4 steps guide the way. 1. Recognition. You begin by noticing the pattern without judgment. You start to observe instead of react. You say, I've been here before. That awareness breaks the trance. You recognize that the anger, the fear, the sadness aren't random. They're familiar visitors returning with a message. To recognize is to bring light to the unseen. It's the moment you stop blaming the mirror and begin cleaning the lens. 2. Integration. Once you recognize a pattern, you move toward understanding. You ask, what is this emotion trying to teach me? Integration isn't about approval. It's about inclusion. You make space for your own shadow, the parts of you that once felt unworthy of love. Instead of suppressing your jealousy, you ask what need it hides. Instead of denying your sadness, you ask what loss it mourns. As you listen, the tension between opposites begins to soften. What was once fragmented starts to form a whole. 3. Conscious action. Awareness without action changes nothing. The next time life offers you the same stage, you choose differently. You pause before reacting. You breathe before repeating. You answer a familiar trigger with a new response. This is how consciousness rewrites the script. Every deliberate act, no matter how small, sends a signal to the unconscious that you're ready to participate in your own evolution. 4. Legacy. When pain becomes wisdom, it stops being just yours. You begin to live in a way that reflects what you've learned. You speak gently to others because you remember what silence felt like. You forgive easily because you know what bitterness costs. You teach through presence more than words. The wound that once isolated you becomes a bridge that connects you to others. This is how healing ripples outward, through compassion born from experience. Individuation doesn't make life easier. It makes it meaningful. It doesn't remove the shadow. It teaches you how to walk beside it. The bridge between your conscious self and your unconscious isn't built in a day. It's built with every honest moment of awareness, every act of courage, every step toward authenticity. The miracle is that once you stop fighting the unconscious and begin to collaborate with it, life stops feeling like opposition and starts feeling like dialogue. You realize that everything you feared inside you was never there to destroy you. It was trying to bring you home. But even in healing, there are traps waiting to pull you back into the old patterns. The most subtle traps appear not at the beginning of the journey, but near its middle, when you've begun to see the pattern, when you've touched the truth, when you felt the first taste of awakening. Many people mistake that taste for the whole meal. They step off the carousel of repetition, only to climb onto a new one made of light. The shadow loses its grip, but now another illusion takes its place, the illusion of arrival. It begins quietly. You start speaking the language of healing. You talk about energy, alignment, consciousness, and purpose. You share insights that once felt hidden, and others look to you for guidance. And in that reflection, a dangerous shift can happen. You begin to identify not with the seeker, but with the sage. Jung called this inflation of the ego, the moment when the ego claims the divine as its own and believes it has become the self. The mirror turns golden, but it's still a mirror. You start to see yourself as enlightened, forgetting that the light you hold was never yours to own. This spiritual inflation feels beautiful at first, clarity, power, peace. But soon, humility disappears. You stop listening to others because you believe you've transcended what still binds them. You isolate yourself behind an aura of superiority. The same shadow you thought you had conquered quietly returns, now wearing sacred robes. You fall not into darkness this time, but into light that blinds. Jung warned that the greater the light of consciousness, the longer the shadow it casts. The danger is not in awakening. It's in forgetting that you are still human. Others take a different route. Worn out by the long battle within, they retreat entirely. They confuse peace with withdrawal, silence with escape, spirituality with numbness. They build invisible walls around the soul, calling it solitude. But the real work was never meant to remove you from the world. It was meant to root you more deeply in it. The purpose of awareness is participation, not avoidance. God is not only in the meditation room. He's in the traffic, in the argument, in the trembling moment when you choose compassion over pride. Growth without grounding becomes illusion. Healing without humility becomes vanity. You can spend years polishing your consciousness until it shines. But if you cannot hold another person's pain without judgment, you've mistaken the reflection for the truth. The path is not about escaping your humanity. It's about sanctifying it. To be whole is to be both broken and blessed at once. To walk with your imperfections as companions, not enemies. Avoiding these traps means remembering what the soul already knows. You're not here to be perfect, but to be complete. And completeness includes the parts you once rejected. The anger, the doubt, the tenderness, the longing. The goal of inner work is not to rise above, but to live through. Wholeness is messy. It's sacred and ordinary. It's spilling coffee while talking about enlightenment. It's forgiving yourself for forgetting again. The real awakening is quiet, humble, human. It happens when love replaces performance, when presence replaces pursuit. The spiritual path doesn't make you special. It makes you real. And when you stop trying to be the light and simply allow the light to move through you, something extraordinary unfolds. The opposites reconcile. The divine and the human finally shake hands within you. And when you embrace everything you are, shadow and spirit, wound and wonder, something extraordinary happens. Rebirth never comes with fanfare. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or applause. It arrives quietly, almost unnoticed, like sunlight finding its way into a cave that's forgotten the warmth of day. There's no dramatic revelation, no sudden victory, just a soft recognition that something inside you has changed forever. You wake up one morning and realize that you no longer crave the things that once hurt you. You don't need validation from what once wounded you. You don't chase what left. You don't fear what might. The noise has fallen away, and in its place, there is stillness. That stillness isn't emptiness. It's peace. It's a space that appears when the battle between the ego and the soul finally ends. You spent so long trying to fix, prove, and protect yourself that you forgot healing isn't about control. It's about surrender. When you stop fighting the dark, you realize it was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to introduce you to your own light. That's the quiet miracle of awakening. The pain that once seemed endless transforms into understanding. The same emotion that used to consume you now teaches you how to breathe. Carl Jung once said, "The soul heals when the ego kneels before the self." That single sentence carries the essence of rebirth. The self, the divine whole center of your being, has always been there, patient beneath the noise of personality and fear. The ego isn't evil. It's just small. It believes it must carry the world alone. But when it finally kneels, something greater stands up within you. That's when life begins to move through you instead of against you. You realize you don't need to hold everything together. You just need to stay open enough for grace to enter. Healing, you learn, is not the absence of struggle, but the transformation of your relationship with it. The waves of emotion still rise, but now they don't drown you. They cleanse you. You no longer see breakdowns as evidence of failure, but as proof that something deeper is surfacing. You no longer fear the shadow because you understand its language. You can sit in the discomfort and know it's not the end. It's the beginning of integration. The same pain that once silenced you becomes a very force that helps you speak with honesty and compassion. And then, something subtle yet extraordinary happens. You start to see beauty in what ordinary. The morning light feels like a blessing. The sound of laughter, once distant, now fills the room like prayer. You look at others, not as threats, not as mirrors of your wounds, but as souls traveling to their own labyrinths. Just like you, compassion replaces judgment. Gratitude replaces fear. What you once called broken now feels sacred. You no longer rush to escape what is. You lean into it, trusting that everything unfolding is part of something meaningful. This is rebirth, the kind that doesn't need recognition. It doesn't post itself for the world to see. It happens quietly in the space between breaths, in the gentle moments when you stop running and start returning. You become more patient with yourself, more forgiving toward your past. The people who once triggered you now teach you where love still wants to grow. You stop searching for closure because you finally understand. Closure isn't something given, it's something lived. You realize that every fall was a preparation for flight. Every ending was a seed of beginning. Every silence was a doorway to the self. The cave you once feared to enter was never a prison. It was your chrysalis. And now, standing at its mouth, you see that the light outside is the same light that has always been burning within. What you do not transform into consciousness will transform you through repetition. If this message spoke to you, comment below. Today, I choose to break the pattern.